So in the previous videos, we talked about different control structures. We talked about 3 different control structures. First one is sequential control, which we always have it in our code. And then we saw some examples about selection control or if statements. In this video, I'm going to talk about iterative control or loops. So with all of these selection controls, what we are doing is we are controlling how we are executing the part of code that we have in our program. So when it comes to iterative control, we are going to get into a statement very similar to conditionals. You are going to have kind of a condition, and then based on that expression and that test condition, you're going to decide if you want to do something or not. So if that expression is still true, you're going to go into some statements and complete them. You're going to check that statement again. If it's still true, you're going to go through the statements that you have, complete them. You're going to test that condition again. So until that condition is true or it is valid, you are going to go through the statements over and over and over again. As soon as that statement is not true anymore or false, you're going to end that loop and continue with the rest of your program. So in general, it sounds very simple. So you go, again, it's sequential. You get to that expression. You go through some statements. You check that condition or conditions. And then if they're true, you go through the statements sequentially. When you're done, come back to test it again. And you're going to repeat this one. You're going to go through that iterative kind of loop or iterative design to see what is happening and when you need to stop. There are 2 different loops that we can create in Python. We have for loop and while loop. And we are going to, in this video, we are going to focus on while loops. And then in the next videos, I'm going to show you 2 different types of for loops that we can have. All right. So let's come back to our program. We are going to start with a simple example that doesn't require a loop. And I'm going to show you the values of loops and why they are important for us to have. All right, so let's say we want to have a simple print statement. We want to just print hello world, okay? So if I run this code one more time, you're going to see that hello that is being printed. So now if I want to print hello, let's say 5 times, then I need to copy and paste that 5 times. And now if I ask you to print it 500 times, are you going to copy and paste it 500 times? That is just time consuming, and there should be a better way or easier way to print that many times that we want, if it's 5 times or 500 times or 5 million times. And this is a very, very simple example of things that basically don't change and you just want to print it. There are stuff that change as you're printing them, and we're going to get to all of those. But let's focus on this very, very simple example. So we again want to print this hello 5 times. How can we create a loop to do that for us? So I'm going to start with some headers first, and that way we see, okay, this is before you get to your loop, and then you go through your loop, and then we are going to put something after that. So you can see that progression of like stuff being executed throughout your program. So in this program, let's see. We are working with while loops. Okay, so you're going to have this printed as a header, and we are going to have another print statement down here and say end of, okay, and we can, I'm going to format this one so it looks nice and I'm going to put it here. I'm going to allocate, let's see, 50 characters to it. I'm going to center my text, and I'm going to fill out the rest of like all of the blank stuff with with the equal sign or dash or whatever character you want. So let's run this one more time. So now we should have the header and we should have that end of our program statement. All right, cool. So we have everything that we want. Now what we are going to do is we are going to take this code and create a loop, a while loop, and instead of having a statement that is repeated a number of times, we are going to do that through the loop. We are going to have our loop to take care of that repetition for us. So we are going to have, instead of 5 lines in this case, or n number of lines, we are going to have one, which is like one statement, and then we are going to repeat that one statement 5 times instead of having that statement 5 times, if that makes sense. Okay, so now let's talk about how a while loop is created. So with a while loop, we need a couple of things. The way that I design a while loop is to follow 4 different steps. So if you follow the steps, always you're never going to go wrong. So, but as you get more advanced, you might want to skip, or there are cases in which you can skip 1 or 2 of those steps. But to start, always think about those 4 steps. Even though you want to skip any of them, think about what replaced them. Again, at first, throughout this course, you always need to follow the 4 steps that we have. Okay, so the way that we are going to do it, let's just start with having our while keyword. So I'm going to start with the step 2 actually, and then we are going to go back and fill out the step 1. So it uses the keyword while, and then you need to have a condition here that basically checks it to see if you have reached a certain point, or if the certain condition that you have is true, still true, for you to repeat the statement that you have in your program. So for our condition, what we want to do is we want to repeat something 5 times. So I'm going to create a counter for myself that counts the number of times that we printed something. So I'm going to say counter, and I'm going to say as long as this counter is less than 5. So I'm going to keep counting, so 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. As long as you haven't reached 5, I want to keep doing something. So to do that, first of all, there are 2 different things that we need to take care of. This counter needs an initial value, which is our step 1. So in our step 1, we are going to give this variable an initial value. So for now, I'm going to start with value 1. Okay, so I'm going to say start from 1, and then as you go, check this one to see if counter, which has a value of 1, is less than 5. In this case, it is. 1 is less than 5. So if that's the case, we are going to, let me take one of these and delete the rest. So as soon as I have the header, I'm going to press enter, and similar to conditionals, you're going to have the indentations. So with the indentation, you're signifying that this print statement is part of this while loop, and anything that doesn't have the indentation is not part of the loop. So you're not repeating those statements that are not part of the while loop. So it knows exactly, okay, this line is part of the while loop, and this line 12 is not, right? So indentations are very significant. All right, so far we have a step 1, which you're initializing your conditional variable. And then in a step 2, we are creating our condition and we're putting it inside a while header. So we have while, and then this is your condition, as long as counter is less than 5. And then you're going to have your statement. Whatever you want to repeat, you're going to put it here. And then the last step, which is inside your while loop, is going to be updating this conditional variable. So as we go, we want to count it up in this example to reach and to get to 5. So at some point, counter is not less than 5 anymore and want to stop right there, right? So there should be a way for you to change this variable so at some point this while loop ends. If you don't change counter, 1 is always less than 5, and this becomes an infinite loop. We don't want that. In most cases, we don't want an infinite loop. So we need to have a method, a way for us to make sure this counter, this variable changes, so this condition is false at some point. Okay, so in this case, since we want to reach 5 and we are starting from 1, I'm going to count up. So I'm going to say counter equal to counter plus 1. So that way, it's going to evaluate the right side of the equation. So counter is 1, so 1 plus 1 is 2. And it's going to assign 2 to this counter. So the new value of counter is going to be 2. It comes back here, is 2 less than 5? Yes, still less than 5. You print hello. Now, you have 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 is less than 5. So you see, go back to your condition. You print hello. Now you have 3 plus 1, which is 4. You have this value 4. You go back to your condition. It's 4 less than 5. Yes, it is. You print hello. And then 4 plus 1 is 5. You put 5 inside your counter. It's 5 less than 5. No, it is not. Then you're done. You move on. You print this line. And then that is the end of your program. All right, let's go ahead and run this one, see what we get. And as you will see, we are going to get 4 print statements, like 4 hellos instead of 5 that we wanted. Let's take a look and see why that happened. If you start from 1 and you go all the way to 5, not including 5, that means you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, not including 5. That means 4 times. So going through that loop 4 times. So if you want to include 5, there are a couple of ways you can do it. You can either start from 0. That way you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're starting at 5. You're stopping at 5. So that is 5 iteration. Or if you want to start from 1, you can go all the way to 6. So that means you stop at 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and not including 6. Or you can keep everything the same and change your operator and say counter less or equal to 5. That means include 5 in this case. So either of those ways is going to work, and you can try them and you will see you're going to get 5 hellos. So again, this is the start of your program. This is the loop that you have. It goes through and repeats something for you a number of times. In this case, we are repeating it 5 times. And then this is the end of your program. You can easily change the start and end value to create different number of iterations for yourself. So in this case, let's start from 10. If I want to still have 5 iterations, I'm going to go to 15. So starting from 10 to 15 is actually 6 iteration. So if you run this one, it's going to be 6 hellos because you have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 15. Because we have that less or equal sign, okay? So depending on your start and end value, you can change the number of iterations that you want to have. So again, let's follow all of the steps, just like recap it. So step 1 is you need to have your conditional variable and set that up. Okay, so you need to give that an initial value. If you have one conditional variable, that means one initialization. If you have more than one, then you have multiple initialization up there. And then same thing with your header. So you have your while keyword, and then you put your condition or conditions. So if you have more than one condition, you're going to put them here with an and or other operations that you want to have. And then depending on this condition and depending how many times it is true, you're going to go through and repeat the statements that you have. So in this case, we only have kind of one statement here that is printed for us, which is hello. And then our last step is updating that conditional variable. If you do not update your conditional variable, you're going to get an infinite loop. And it's going to just go forever because your counter or your conditional variable never changes. It's going to stay always less than 15. And you're going to print hello forever. And again, in most cases, we don't want an infinite loop. So it's a simple process, simple while loop. In the next example, in the next video, I'm going to show you some other examples on how to set a while loop and how to create different structures and or solve different problems that we have.